Hello everybody, Ben Rogers here, the Raptors Digest, reacting to some Toronto Raptors news. And obviously the biggest storyline coming into this offseason is, maybe beyond the fourth pick and who we're going to draft, is what's going to happen to the Toronto Raptors' GOAT, Kyle Lowry. Where will he end up playing? Obviously, throughout the course of the regular season, specifically around the trade deadline, we heard every possible team he could potentially go to. The Lakers, the Sixers, the Heat, even talks about the Dallas Mavericks and the Knicks poking their heads in there asking about Kyle Lowry. But the Raptors didn't trade him at the deadline, and the rumblings, the rumors, they've only picked up as the season went along. And really, since the NBA season's over, the playoffs have happened, we haven't heard much in regards to Kyle Lowry, but we did get an update. So it's been a while since we played the segment. I almost forgot about it. So I'm going to play the news segment, and then we'll dive straight into it. That's alright, so we had a Raptors news update. I'll throw the quote on the screen. NBA insider John Hollinger came out and said that the Miami Heat should be favorited in signing Kyle Lowry this offseason. Specifically, he brought up a potential sign-and trade with Okpala, Precious Achiuwa, and Andre Iguodala being sent back to the Toronto Raptors. And in this article, in this piece he came out with, he talked a lot about just what makes sense for this Kyle Lowry situation, specifically also talking about how the Sixers should remain in contention, should still be talked about in terms of speculation for Kyle Lowry, but the fact that they have a lot of luxury tax issues, there's a lot more hurdles that they have to sort of jump over if they want to acquire Kyle Lowry. So the Miami Heat, whether it's an outright signing or a sign and trade, should be favorited. And he brought up this sign and trade specifically as he thinks it gives the Heat a little bit more flexibility to add more natural pieces around a Kyle Lowry, Jimmy Butler backcourt, and obviously Bam Adebayo there. They're giving up a few bigs, a veteran in Andre Iguodala, who has been a nice piece in there, but has certainly fallen off in terms of his prime Golden State, Denver, Philadelphia years. He's not at that level anymore, but still is a solid contributor night in, night out, specifically for a team that's trying to make a playoff run with all that experience and still being in pretty good shape. But obviously, as Raptors fans, we're not too worried about if he's leaving or where he goes if he's leaving. I'm sure we'll have a discussion. We'll worry about all that. But the Raptors are more interested, and what I'm more trying to sink my teeth into with this report, with this article, is what's going to happen, right? What's trying to press that button to get this second screen here. But if Kyle Lowry leaves, can we get something in return for him? Can we get something back? Because clearly, during the NBA trade deadline, we missed out on Hero, we weren't going to get Hero. We missed out on Duncan Robinson. We missed out on a Talen Horton-Tucker trade that the Lakers weren't going to offer, right? Maybe we could have got Matisse Thybulle, and we were asking for too much from the Sixers. Obviously, Riker and I, we talked about this to death. We were happy that the Raptors didn't give Kyle Lowry up for peanuts. You don't want to set that precedent where if you hold out on a team, you leave it to the last minute, that you'll just fold and cave, right? The Raptors, I thought, played it right with the cards that they were dealt, but we did give up on talent. So at this point now, you're willing to take back anything that you can in a potential sign and trade if Kyle Lowry wants to leave. And this return, it's interesting from the Miami Heat. It's an interesting return. We're going to dive into it straight up here, but we'll we got Aaron Baines popping up on the screen, but we'll talk about a couple of the players. And the first guy we'll talk about is Precious Achiuwa, because I think he's the most valuable piece that you can sort of see coming back in this sign and trade. Obviously a power forward from the Miami Heat, an energy player, gets a lot of rebounds, didn't have the biggest opportunity with the Miami Heat this season, but when he was out there, he showed that he's certainly not a bust. And he was a rookie this year, and he's a young guy, his early 20s, and he's the sort of player that the Raptors really needed for a large stretch of this season. And then we're going to compare a lot of these guys to Birch and Freddie Gillespie, but the Raptors thrive when they have energy big men that gets the game going, that can finish. You can dump the ball off and they dunk in the rim. Precious Achiuwa is not much of a three-point shooter or playmaker, but he can certainly grab those rebounds, play solid defense, and he has a little bit of a touch around the rim. But obviously, young big men, they take a while to develop. And the fact he was a first-round pick, I think he didn't exceed expectations, nor fell below them. He's kind of on that trajectory where he's a project, but could certainly, in the right system, in the right development environment, which he would be with the Toronto Raptors and the Miami Heat, can certainly turn into a solid player. So that's the main centerpiece you're getting back for, your multi-time All-Star, your greatest player in franchise history. He's the main piece. And then I think the guy that not a lot of people know about is Okpala, who maybe if you go back to the preseason, he's a guy that had a bunch of threes. He just finished his second year going into his third season. Hit a bunch of threes against the Toronto Raptors in a preseason game, but he's also an energy guy, can play defense, has a bit of a stroke on him, not the most consistent, but you look at his stats from college somewhere out there, he's had such a small sample size of NBA games, actual NBA action. It's tough to really extrapolate from his stats, but again, similar to Precious Achiuwa, undersized big man that can shoot he can actually shoot, but is mobile, and I think could be a cool development asset for this team. It's a bit more polished, I'd say, on the offensive end, but still has a lot of room to grow. Okpala, it's hard to, as I previously mentioned, to judge where he's really at due to the fact that he hasn't played that much. He hasn't gotten that much opportunity for the Miami Heat. So he's sort of the mystery box, the Jake Paul mystery box that he sends out to little kids. What are you getting from Okpala if you end up actually trading for him? So that's an interesting piece to throw in there. A young guy himself. So third season. Two guys in Precious Achiuwa, Okpala are not bad flyers to pick up on players. And I think Achiuwa is a guy you certainly keep on the roster, and Okpala, who we'll compare and contrast to different guys on this team. And then obviously the final one, Iguodala. Everyone knows who he is. The Martians have the death beam pointed at the world, at the earth. You want one person to take that shot. It's Iguodala. Certainly, as I mentioned earlier, he's not the guy he once was, but he still is a solid contributor to a good playoff team. Now, there might be question marks whether he'd want to play for the Toronto Raptors. We saw him hold out from playing on the Memphis Grizzlies, who did have a solid roster on them. They made it into the play-in tournament. I think if it wasn't for the fact that it was a play-in tournament, they would have actually made the playoffs. So he didn't want to play for a bottom-feeder playoff team, even though that's what the Miami Heat ended up becoming after following the year that they made the NBA Finals. But assuming Iguodala wants to come in there, wants to stay, he's an expiring contract, I think he'd get minutes on this Toronto Raptors team. I think he'd probably exceed DeAndre Bembry, Stanley Johnson, whoever we end up keeping in those, maybe Yuta Watanabe, right? I think Iguodala, just with his veteran presence, might take minutes away from them. Whether that's the right choice or not, if you're, because I think there's a lot of promise, specifically in Utah. And I think Bembry, with a roster that's more well-constructed, I think Bembry's a really nice role player and not necessarily a guy you want the ball in his hands, creating for other people. And obviously, we'll see how they develop this offseason. But Iguodala, he could be a cool piece to have on this team. Now, those are the players. It's a little bit of an underwhelming package if you consider what the expectations were for this Toronto Raptors team coming into this offseason, what we could get for Kyle Lowry, who really knows. But do I see this and say, would I want this package for nothing or compared to nothing? Because obviously you're paying Iguodala 1 year of big money. It is a $10-11 million contract. And then you still have roster spots being eaten up by Precious and Okpala. And I think if that's what's going to happen, if it's the choice between these guys and nothing, you obviously take it. But the question mark is, would they really get minutes? Would they really have an opportunity with the Toronto Raptors? Because everyone wants big men in this. That's a Toronto Raptors fan. That's a team. We don't want another season of tanking. We don't want another year where we're sort of dialing it back, just running it back for a struggle, but these guys are small. The Okpala, Precious Achiuwa, they are not true centers, right? They're not true guys that you consider to be proper big men. They be playing the power forward position. And what do the Toronto Raptors have? We have Pascal Siakam, who's certainly going to be our starter main guy on this team. Right, I know people are down in the dumps with Pascal Siakam, but he's still our number one option at this point. We have Chris Boucher, who Riker and I have been preaching on this podcast. Play him at power forward. He's better at power forward. He's going to thrive. He's going to be a beast when he's playing that position. So we have Chris Boucher as our true backup power forward who can maybe slide to center occasionally, but And then you also have a Freddie Gillespie who really played the center position for the Toronto Raptors, but again was a grit and grind power forward really by nature. Smaller guy, only 6'9". He gets a lot of rebounds and he does a lot of the things that we've seen Precious Achiuwa, Casey Okpala do. So are you higher on Precious and Casey than Freddie Gillespie, who did have some solid games for this Toronto Raptors team this season? And I think just due to age and potential being a first-round pick, you'd look at Precious Achiuwa as maybe having a higher ceiling, and you'd rock with him over Freddie Gillespie, who is an undrafted guy that we signed in the midway through a year on a 10-day contract, but did earn his spot on this team. But yeah, you'd rock with Precious. Okpala, I don't know. That's a tougher question. The jump shot is more intriguing there because Freddie did obviously struggles from scoring beyond the outside the key, but I don't know. I think there's room for debate when you look at those guys compared to Freddie Gillespie, and then you look at the other guys that were playing power forward for this team outside of Pascal and Chris Boucher, right? Utah was up there a little bit. Bembry he usually got slid down to the guard position. Stanley Johnson was their small ball four, and then obviously OG Anunoby can get up there. And the question marks is, do we really need more people to fill that position? We need true centers. We need big men that can come in and just, load it up down low. And obviously we want to bring Ken Birch back, and we want a true starting center. We made a whole video on Nerlens Noel just yesterday, so it's an interesting situation for the Toronto Raptors. And maybe you just bring them in as assets, you build them up, look at them through the 905 and see what you can do and see what happens. And obviously we lost Jalen Harris, so having more young prospects on the team to play in the 905, it's a positive thing. And that one preseason game we saw of Okpala playing against the Toronto Raptors, it could be cool. And then the Andre Iguodala side of things, I think if he's willing to play, he could be an actual piece for this team that's trying to succeed next season. We do not want to tank once again the next year. So I'm cool with it. I'm cool with this return, even though we could have got more at the trade deadline. I think if you bring in those guys, and maybe the Raptors want to keep their cap going into next season, and Andre Iguodala can mess that up, maybe that's one reason you hold back. There's a lot of free agents we're going to be talking about. We have talked about over the course of this year or this off season, but assuming that it's these guys are nothing, you rock with it. It's an interesting sort of move. It's an interesting sort of pickup, but let me know what you guys think about this potential return for the Raptors. Grow Kyle Lowry. Should they be seeking more? Should we try to, nudge him to go to the Sixers? Because it's really all up to Kyle Lowry to get back, and maybe a Matisse Thybulle, who I'm really high on, and maybe a Maxey, these types of guys. Or are you just cool with whatever and let Lowry go down to South Beach? So let me know in the comment section below. Check out the Instagram, the TikTok, all that cool stuff. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.